Okay, back to Aristotle's Metaphysics. And you recall that in discussing his Metaphysics, we've talked about how he defines metaphysics as the science of all sciences, the most general principles. Therefore, his development of his own theory of forms in response to what he sees as inadequacies in Plato's, and his distinction of four kinds of causal factor that have to be appealed to in explaining what anything is, and explaining any kind of change. The four kinds of cause being efficient cause, material cause, formal cause, final cause. You ought to know those until they just come out in your dreams and you're talking about them in your sleep. Metaphysics is the science of being. There are particular sciences dealing with particular kinds of beings. But the science of being qua being, being in general, is the most general concept, is what metaphysics is about. And so Aristotle distinguishes, you remember, between different categories of being, that is to say, different ways in which we use this general notion of being. Substances, qualities, places, relationships, so on and so on and so forth. He actually enumerates 10 different categories, and I'll come back to those subsequently. We also started talking about laws of being. Laws of thought they are as well, just as the categories of being are also categories of thought. Notice there's a correlation between the way in which the mind functions, thinks, and the way in which reality is. You see, if reality is rational, and we are rational, then our rationality provides us with an entree to reality. Get it? If reality is rational, and we are rational, then our rationality gives us an entree to reality. Okay? Now, the laws of being are these three. We talk about the first one, which is the crucial one. The rest just follow from it. The law of non-contradiction, that a being cannot both be and not be something at the same time and in the same respect. And by that same token, you cannot both affirm and deny something at the same time and in the same respect. And we symbolize that law of non-contradiction typically by simply saying that A is not non-A. A is not non-A. It cannot both be and not be. It cannot be this and not be this at the same time and in the same respect. And of course, with that double negative, it's tantamount to the law of identity. That A equals A. The thing is identical with itself. I am I, you are you. Let's not get ourselves mixed up. A cat is a cat, not a catastrophe. I had a Latin teacher in high school who, when somebody asked, is this the word from which we get our word so-and-so, would sometimes get frustrated at the imagination of young high school students, and with his Scottish accent would say, my lad, a cat is a cat and not a catastrophe, and so forth. Law of identity. A cat is a cat, not a catastrophe. Maybe become a catastrophe, but that would be at a different time. Okay, A equals A. Then also implicit in the law of non-contradiction is the law of excluded middle. Something either is or is not. No other alternatives, no third alternative. A or non-A, no third alternative. This is often referred to as a two-value logic. If A and non-A are true and false, truth and falsity, then there's no other alternative. There's no third alternative. So the law of excluded middle gives you a two-valued logic, and some modern logics have questioned that third law. But it's the first two, which are crucial in any case. There's some subtlety in the third one. That,
Is that what Aristotle was talking about things going on about how there's like paradoxes and such on the process?
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah, white, black, and green. Yeah. If you've got white, I don't know how to write. If you've got white, black, and green, you say, does that mean? I don't know how to read. Does that mean you've got three valued? No, because white and black are not contradictories. You see, the contradictories would be white and not white. And in that sense, you've got white, and then these two, and not white. Okay. Or if you've got green and not green, or black and not black. The point is that while white and not white are contradictories, white and black are not contradictories, they're rather what Aristotle calls contraries. And if any of you taking intro to logic, you've run into that difference before. How many of you are taking or have taken introduction to logic? No, you won't be taking it currently because it's the same hour as this, isn't it? Yeah, okay. So keep these three laws of thought in the back of your mind for recall, keeping in mind that they're also laws of being, since if all being is rational, and if our thinking is rational, then correct thinking gives you entree to being. Okay? Now, a couple of other items that I want to mention before we move on. The category of substance. Aristotle is forever saying, now there are three senses of this and two senses of that and four of the other, and when he comes to talking about substance, he distinguishes two, sometimes he distinguishes three senses of the word substance. In one sense, it is particulars that are substances. Particulars or parts of, or contents of particulars that are substances. So this marker is a substance. This desk is a substance. This hand is a substance. I'm a substance. Notice the obvious point that in philosophical uses of the term substance, it does not imply materiality. So we speak later on, historically, of soul as substance. That is to say, it's an entity. It's a being in the primary sense of a being. A primary substance. It's a particular. It's a thing. Now, there is a secondary sense of substance in which we refer it to forms of substances. Forms. And once in a while, he alludes to a third, tertiary sense, in which matter, bare, unformed matter, is spoken of as substance. But it's the first two that he really lays emphasis on. The first is actually referred to as primary substance, and the second as secondary substance. Now, you may say, well, that's an interesting piece of the dictionary. So what? Well, so what is that Plato would never have said it that way. Plato would never say that being is primarily particulars, would he? You see. Plato would have said particulars aren't beings, they're becomings. Remember? In other words, in saying that particulars are primary substances, he's saying that the primary kind of being, the primary realities, are particular things. That's revolutionary for Plato. You see. What must the old man be thinking? You see. For Plato, after all, the particulars are just fleeting copies of. Now, for Aristotle, they're the primary reality. Yeah, but you might respond, well, aren't the forms also realities? Not in the same sense. You see, Aristotle insists that you never find forms by themselves, independent entities. You find particulars by themselves as separate entities, but not forms. You only find forms in composite, in composition with matter, as particulars, particular bodies. Okay. The particulars, you remember, are hylomorphic. That is to say, form plus matter. So while forms are real, they're real in a contingent sense.
If there's no transcendent form, then how does he account for them not ever changing?
All right, you're anticipating what comes in a very short while. Namely, one grand exception to the rule that you never find forms as separate entities. Okay. And it's by virtue of that in God that particular forms never change. Okay. We'll see how in just a little while. But the primary secondary substance then stresses the primacy of particulars. You know, you can put that in a myriad of ways. You can say that Aristotle is more down to earth, right? He's more of a physical realist. Plato is more the idealist. Aristotle is more the realist. Yeah, that terminology is used. Some interpreters of Plato, discarding his conception of God, have said, well, Aristotle is really a philosophical naturalist. Just talking about natural things, particulars. But as these two traditions, the Platonic and the Aristotelian, are gradually transmitted on to the Middle Ages, you'll find that the theological ramifications that flow from these two alternatives are rather significant. The Platonic tradition informs the Augustinian and Franciscan traditions, whereas the Aristotelian informs Thomas Aquinas and also the Dominican tradition, the Jesuits. Very significant. And that, incidentally, is true to this day.
Particular can stand alone without form. What's the difference between...
No, I didn't say without a form.
Okay.
No, because a particular is a composite of form and matter. Particulars can stand alone as separate entities. Forms are not separate entities. Okay. Forms are not separate entities.
Does he say the forms themselves are separate entities? Or they only exist as a conglomeration?
They only exist in composite with matter.
So they don't exist each for everyone?
Well, they don't exist in any independent realm. There is no world of forms separate from matter. Where does the form come from? Well, it seems as if it's drawn out of the potential of the matter itself. You see?
And the particulars are always the same as becoming.
Yes.
What is the top end?
Okay. You have this composite of form and matter. Okay. The matter is in a process of changing, growing, for instance. The form, which gives the particular its nature, also gives it its potential. Okay. So in the case, for instance, of an infant, the body is growing, the matter expanding. The form of that infant, you see, the form of that infant gives it potential for becoming a human adult. So the telos, then, is identified by the potential of the form. Get it? So that the final cause is to become, well, what you might call a flourishing adult.
It's not really what I would say is ideal.
Oh, but depends. The ideal is not to become a disembodied adult, you see. It is for Plato. It's not for Aristotle. The ideal is to become a full-grown, fully functioning adult. Yeah.
If particulars are primary, forms are secondary, where did Aristotle? Is that tertiary?
Yeah, matter is tertiary. But you have to be careful here. Let's say bare matter is tertiary. And yeah, he does seem to think that there is a hypothetical bare matter. Not that it ever actually existed, but hypothetical bare matter. You have to be careful because when this is applied, and here I'm jumping ahead a little bit in order to flesh it out in response to your questions. If you're taking, for instance, a human being as a particular, okay, a human person. Well, a human person consists of rational form plus animal body. Okay? What distinguishes the human species is that we're rational beings. So what distinguishes the humans among the whole family of animals is rationality, rational form plus animal body. But animal body, of course, has then animal form, or as he likes to call it, animal soul, plus vegetative body, organic material. And vegetable body, matter, has what he calls vegetative form or vegetative soul, nothing to do with the couch potato, and elemental matter, matter composed of elements. You see, you work down that way to the hypothetical bare matter. The point being that vegetable life, vegetative life, has functions of nutrition and reproduction. Okay? Animal life has functions of sensation and locomotion. But in addition to that, human beings have functions of rationality, rational functions. So humans have rational functions plus sensation and locomotion and nutrition and reproduction. Other animals have sensation, locomotion, nutrition, and reproduction. Vegetative things have only nutrition and reproduction. So the final cause is defined in those ways in terms of the form. The potential for a growing thing by virtue of nutrition and reproduction. The potential for a life that includes, in addition, sensation and locomotion. The potential for a full life involving these, but including also rationality. And in that way, he gets his definition of the good when we get to ethics. So that the good for Aristotle is a full life, that is to say, all of this, a full life under the rule of reason. Yes. Human flourishing in that sense.
Where would you put inanimate objects in this?
Yeah, inanimate objects obviously are down here. So that if you're talking of a rock, you'll say you'd have to talk there of elemental matter with this particular free spatial form that it has, or having a form of granite or something of that sort. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And the question is, what is the bottom line? You say, and there the only thing you can talk about it is what I call bare matter. The Aristotelian medieval philosophers, the scholastics, talked of prime matter, materia prima, prime matter. That is a matter in the first place, that hypothetical first place. Yeah.
I understand the idea of a form not has to be with a body or an entity.
Yes.
When you use the analogy of a person, I wonder how Aristotle would answer Plato's concepts of justice or beauty or something like that. It seems that from Plato's perspective that Aristotle is caught in a cave.
Yeah, I wonder if we could hold on that question. The question is, how would Aristotle speak of things like justice and beauty? From Plato's standpoint, it seems as if Aristotle is staying around in the cave. You say, what is justice itself, ideally? Beauty itself, ideally. Let's hold on that, could we, until we get to his ethics, because I think we need, in addition to this aspect of metaphysics, you have to get into something further about human psychology into the picture in order to answer that ethical question. Okay. All right. Now let's see. All that discussion arose from talking of primary and secondary substance, right? One last item, the distinction between essence and accident. Distinction between essence and accident. Now, you can pick up on this if you turn in Kaufman to page 331 and 332. 331 and 332, where in chapter 7 on 331, he says things are said to be, first in an accidental sense, second by their own nature. So once again, essence and accident are different ways in which things are. There are accidental properties. There are essential properties. An essential property of a human being is rationality, that capacity at least. An accidental property that isn't essential to the nature of human beings is that I have blue eyes. At least so I'm told. Now that's accidental, in the sense that it's not essential to the nature of a human being. So that's a simple enough distinction, essence and accident. Now on 332, in chapter 8, he picks up on the distinction between substance in the primary and secondary sense. You notice he first enumerates 1, 2, 3, 4 senses, and then says it follows that substance has 2 senses. Well, first time I read that, I said to myself, what on earth?